Hello and welcome to the Hive. We're so excited to be with you again today, and our special guest is Christie Penner Worden from RaiseUpFaith. She is the Chief Mission Officer. She has a world of experience in the children's ministry arena, both her own personal experience and just the extensive network of folks that she works with as part of RaiseUpFaith. And we're excited to have her with us again today, sharing some insights on something that a lot of you might have on your mind, which is, okay, Christmas is coming and I have all these volunteers, and what should I be doing and what do other people do? So, Christie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We are delighted that you could make it today. So our topic is volunteers at Christmas and at Christmas time. And one of the things that, as I speak with children's ministry leaders, whether they're volunteers or it's their full-time job across the country, the thing that comes up is that there's just this whole entire cycle of volunteer management. And of course, we can't do children's ministry without volunteers. But you begin with, you recruit them, you're like engaging them in their part of the service, their volunteer service, and then encouraging them and then appreciating them. And so not everybody feels equally comfortable at every stage of that rhythm. But today, I just kind of wanted to dig in on the appreciation part, because we are coming up on Christmas, and that seems like a time when kind of everybody pauses and shows appreciation or gifting to everybody, your family, your coworkers, your like everybody. So, do you find that it is true in either the churches that you have served personally or in other churches from some of the folks that you work with, that at Christmas, appreciation is kind of that part of the rhythm that they're really focused on?
I think what I found is timing. So if while you could do appreciation leading up to Christmas to say, hey, we know that Christmas is like the Super Bowl of kids ministry. You've got the World Cup at Easter when, there's these all hands on deck times of the year. But we also know that our volunteers have families and parties and work events, and the dance studio is having something and the soccer team is having something. Like, there's so many things piling on to the calendar that I think there are a couple of ways to think about appreciation. And part of it is just acknowledging what's happening for your volunteers, and that there's a doubling down that happens at Christmas. So I think, the timing of your appreciation is directly proportionate to their acknowledgement of feeling appreciated. So maybe hosting a Christmas party in the middle of December doesn't feel terribly sensitive to all the things they're managing. It could be a November or even a New Year. January can be a really blue time for people. It's a quiet time. Like, we jam everything into 4 weeks in December. And I think it's important to keep in mind that not all of your volunteers will have party invitations. They may not all have family nearby. They might be single or widowed. They might be newly empty nesters. And so it's a different dynamic. And so looking at when or how you appreciate them around what their life actually looks like just shows a compassion and sensitivity. So if they are a family with lots of kids, or they have any kids or lots of family nearby, December might not be a great time for them. November might have space. usually I found that uptake in RSVPs to a party, for example, or to a time of actually being able to get in front of someone and say thank you, January seemed to work better. It doesn't mean that your gift has to be given, but to say, hey, I want to acknowledge you at Christmas. We're going to get together in January when things quiet down a bit. So, and that could be in a card with a gift or something. But I think how we acknowledge and how we appreciate needs to take into consideration time, season, and season of life for our volunteers too. Some people have 12 volunteers to thank. Some people have 112 to thank. And so I think it looks different based on the size of your ministry. It was always my goal to shrink my team, meaning I wanted more commitment and fewer team members. And one year I managed to get my team from 120 to 80. And that was what success looked like, because their investment, their investment went up. But that meant that I was also having to invest more intentionally in relationship because I was requiring more of fewer people. So the time of year is tricky, especially if you have a pageant and a Jesus birthday bash, and there's a seniors banquet, and there's all the women's breakfast and the men's breakfast. There's so many things that I think one of the kindest things we can do is look at the season as a church family and say, where does it look like kindness to show appreciation? And so it could, if it's going to be a gift and it's the same for everybody, well, I would say, get it under their tree, do it in advance, make it part of their Christmas celebration. But if it's time, like if it's more than a gift and you want to actually spend time with your volunteers, I would be really mindful of the church calendar.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that. And I have heard of people who just intentionally say the season is so busy that we're just going to wait until January when everybody's family has gone home, and whatever their traditions are, they're done, and they had a little bit of rest time leading up to the beginning of the year, and then we're going to come together as a family and we're just going to celebrate all the things that happened before, as we kick off the next year.
Yes.
So I think there's great wisdom in encouraging that.
Yeah. I think too, I've noticed children's ministry leaders have a bit of a crash landing in January. Like you sort of slam into Christmas, and you've been keeping up such a pace that I would say, for the sake of you and your volunteers working in kids ministry, be mindful of the mood coming out of Christmas. And like, I'm too tired. It was too much. I don't want, like, what does it look like to provide rest as a note of appreciation? What does it look like to say, we're going to slow things down in kids ministry so that we can all catch our breath, even the kids who've been off and jacked up and running around and, in PJs till noon and now getting back into routine. I think a mindfulness around how we all sort of crash into the holidays and then have these frenetic couple of weeks with the children home from school and how that plays out, to be mindful that we don't just slip into the blueness, those dark, shorter days of January. We can actually honor how the body responds to all of that, celebration and peopling and all of that, and say, okay, we're going to take a pause and we're going to wait, and then we're going to catch our breath together, and to do a party or a gathering that doesn't feel like more jazz handsing, because we've just done all the jazz handsing. So what does it look like to celebrate quietly, or to just feed one another, to love each other without having to, without there having to be all of the charisma of a holiday season around it, but also keeping the mood elevated. Like, okay, there's nothing in January, because I have found switching gears, like going from fifth gear to first gear, will grind your clutch pretty bad. Like you're revving too high for the season you're in. And so just to be mindful of the mood and pay attention to the mood of your team as well, and plant those opportunities to connect in a meaningful way when they're not being pulled in multiple directions.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. I think no matter what size your church is. If you look at all of the different volunteers that you need, some of them are going to be more on a leadership path, and some are going to be more on just like a doing path. And so those require different levels of commitment and time. So I'm wondering how you handle appreciation for the different commitments that you're asking people to make. You said, when you went from 120 to 80, you invested more because you were asking for more. But even in all of that, how does that work out in real life? I guess.
Yeah. And I think we have to be careful, right? Because someone who invests one Sunday a month as a helper, that could be a huge investment for that individual. And it's a lot for them to do given their season of life. And so we don't want to minimize the contribution of those who are giving all that they can, even though it's less than someone who has more time, energy, whatever, more Sundays to give in a different season of life. And so I would say to be like, one, if there are different levels or layers to the team, that those should be known. Like, just be really transparent that, this is the helpers team, this is the leaders team, this is the teachers team, whatever it is. And it's not tiers of appreciation, but rather tiers of investment. Like, this is the expectation to be part of this team. And if you can't do that, great, that's a different team. And so I would say that sort of transparency allows you to show appreciation differently, right? So if you're going to have a dinner, you might not be able to afford a dinner for 100 volunteers, but for those people that have actually moved the dial on your ministry and have helped you brain and strategize and plan and given those extra days of the week for the pageant, for the event, or they're just consistently stewarding their time week in and week out between Sundays, you can take a team out for dinner, or you can take a team, you can do something different with a team. And that's well understood, right? Like, this team, we're saying thank you in a really particular way. I would say when you have those high level investments, like those people that are coming between Sundays, or they're quietly in the back room doing all the cutting out, all the prep, whether, they're sewing costumes, like, and though we know that sewing takes hours because none of us want to do it. And so when you find someone who does, it's like, you're my new best friend. Please fix all the shepherd costumes so that, the tiny humans don't trip on them. When you have those high level or even short burst investments, I think my favorite thing to do is to go for coffee. It's not an expensive gift per se, but it's my chance to sit with that person who has invested so much to say, okay, like, thank you first, but what do you wish I would have done to set you up for success? What could we do different? Would you do it again? If we do something similar next year, would you be able to make the same? What did you love? Where did you see God show up? And just have almost like a performance review where your leaders get to speak into your leadership, or your leaders get to give you feedback that they might say, well, it's over now, so it doesn't really matter. We do that. We did it once, and there's no point telling her what I think now because we're into January, whatever. Actually, if I ask the questions, if I, in humility, sit one-on-one with someone and say, what you did, can I tell you the difference it made to me? And there's that one-on-one coffee that, again, you're asking for an investment of time, but you're actually making it about them and learning from them and saying, can I take you out? You pick the place. We'll meet you there, like whatever time of day works. So it might actually require you to give up an evening or to meet earlier in the morning than is your preference. But to say, I would just love to learn from you what your experience was, and to just value their contribution in that way. What can I learn from you about how we did this, this, and this? What does it look like for you to continue investing at that level? How can I support you? Or what does your family need? Sometimes when I think about the musicals we would do and how, okay, my kids are in the musical, so you can get leverage parents. Like, you have to drop off and pick up, so you might as well stay and help, right? Like, there's lots of easy ways to get. Dad can build the set. Mom can build the set, mom can organize the kids backstage, whatever it is. But then you realize that while you say they're doing it as a family, they're not actually spending time as a family. So what if those volunteers who invest more, you're actually giving them something for their family? So that would be like, if you don't want to ask for more time, what does a family gift look like for a family that's made sacrifices for the sake of your ministry? So sometimes the investment isn't personal. It's been a whole family investment, and you want to honor the family and say, I know this costs your family more than this many hours. I thought of you. I got you this gift. I'm thinking of, well, you know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of that Advent felt tree, right? Like we're asking a lot of you. I love that tree that CTA has. Like, what if sometimes honoring our volunteers means honoring their family? The number of times when I was just talking to a team member about this earlier, she was talking about the cost of Sundays on the children's ministry leader or children ministry team members' family. It's their weekend, but it's not my weekend. And that it was the only season of my life that I napped was Sunday afternoons when I was a kids pastor with 3 services. And so when you look at the cost on your team to the family, how can you invest in that family? So that would be the other way of thinking about it too, I think, is what is the cost? What is the investment? And how can I honor that? How can I honor your contribution?
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. Um, and I've heard a lot of people talk about their philosophy of appreciation, and I've never actually heard anybody talk about a whole family appreciation. But you're right. A lot of times, that's when people serve, is when their kids are in that age. So I was a Sunday school teacher when my kids were in Sunday school. I was a youth group leader when my kids were in youth, that age,
Yeah.
or I helped. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that that's way more common, that they get drawn in, and then they are, yeah, assigned different things. So yeah, that's great. I mean, that's why I love talking with you, because you
Well,
always think deeply, you always think deep and wide, and always give such a unique perspective.
and I wonder, when you have, someone in their 50s that's a single person that loves kids and has served for 20, 30 years,
Mhm.
probably showing them appreciation looks a lot different than a 32-year-old parent of 3. Like what
Mhm.
appreciation looks like for each of those people. In order to feel appreciated and honored, I want you to see me. And so it might take you a few more minutes to really think through, okay, who is this person? What's the budget? And how do I honor the person? But even if you just lay the gifts out on the first Sunday of Advent, let's say, and say, I just wanted to show you my appreciation before the season overwhelms. I know Christmas is asking a lot for them to open those gifts and have different things, for them to think, oh, we didn't all get the same thing. Like all of a sudden, like, wow, you thought of me. Like what a joy for them to witness each other in that moment, be like, what you got it. That's not what I got. And not from well, let me see what you got, like we're pulling them all apart, but that 50 plus year single person, or even empty nester, or divorced volunteer, like someone who just needs a different measure of care and compassion, or like they're experiencing loneliness at the holidays, or they don't get invited to things because everybody just assumes they have. We make a lot of assumptions about people's family traditions. And so the more you know the people on your team, what if you could imagine the budget individually and look at what's available and say, I think this group of team members would really love this, and this group, and it could be 3 or 4 different things. It doesn't need to be 80 different things, but to show that, like, I see you, and this gift is for you in your stage of life. And for sure, like if you've got a college student that's volunteering with you, the chances of them having their own Christmas tree, or them not losing an ornament they got when they were 19, like when they finally do have their own, like just, they probably don't want a pewter Christmas ornament. As lovely as it is, it's probably just not their preference. So what would it be? What could you find that says, like, I know you're 19, you don't have a home, probably not decorating your own tree. Like, are they regifting it to their mom? Is that the best we can do? So those different phases of life to be able to say, hey, I know that an ornament probably wasn't going to be a great choice for you. So I hope this comes closer to you feeling honored and seen and appreciated.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And a lot of churches are lucky enough to have youth and young adult
Yeah.
volunteers. And you're right. I mean, that's a completely different stage of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And those kids are lucky to have them too, right? Like the chances of the kids I serve, or even my own kids, looking up to me versus looking up to a 20-year-old. I mean, there's really no contest there, right? They're definitely looking up to the cooler person in the room. And turns out it's almost never me as their mom. I'm pretty sure. I'm being generous by saying almost, but um that idea, like, really, that you've got college students that are probably away from family. Maybe they can't get home for the holidays. Like, that's expensive to add travel to your college budget. So just allowing them to feel seen differently is really kind as well. Because that's, especially if you have college students that are from out of town, to me, that is so brave to jump into a church. You wait whatever due diligence period it is before you can serve. You jump in and serve. You don't know any of these families. These aren't the people you grew up knowing. And so I just think honoring that bravery to jump in and serve with other people's kids when they're doing hard things. They're busy trying to adult for the first time. So they're a really special group of volunteers, and we need more of them, because that's really who our kids are looking to. Those are the social media accounts they're looking at, right? They're the younger, cooler, like, what are they doing? Did you know they have a boyfriend? Like, there's all sorts of things that are wild for a young kid to be watching, and a teenager or a college student.
Yes. It's been so long, I almost forgot those first adventures, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I love the kind of the idea of, you could give something before the season, you can give something after the season, because during the season it's just really chaotically busy. One of the things that I was in a conference breakout session one time, and the speaker said one of the things that she did during times of busyness, like when there was going to be a ton of stuff going on, and Christmas would certainly qualify, is she tried to find a spot that she just took over and made it like a snack and refresh station. So like, as you're going in between, like if you've got events or something that require you to be at church and then stay for the event, and then,
Yeah.
on to different other responsibilities, that there was kind of a refuel station. So it could just be quiet. It could be like everybody's favorite candy. It could be something more nutritious and protein laden. I mean, like whatever would work best for your volunteers. And I thought that was another way of kind of, as you said, personalizing the experience for your volunteers, and also recognizing that in a really, really full day, it can be hard to get a quality break, and we all need one. Everybody.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And just that, again, that mindfulness for the fact that I'm asking you to be at church at 8 or whatever time in the morning it is, sometimes earlier, depending on your first service, the chances that you could pack a snack, or that I should expect you to have time to pack a snack while getting your family out the door. That is one way to show appreciation, is to just have refueling. The other thing I've seen that I hadn't done, but it happens at a church locally, when you have multiple services, or volunteers are going to be required to stay for multiple services because the kids are taking over the service, whatever it is, to have a room designated to volunteers' kids. So your volunteer might not have a kid that wants to be in the pageant. They really want to be in like directing the choir or doing the props or stage managing or doing tack for that. That might be the parents' jam. But now they're, the parents are involved. One of their 3 or 4 kids is involved. But what happens to the other kids where church doesn't feel yucky, long, boring, hard, like I want to go home, all of those feelings. And so this one kids pastor set up a whole room. It used to be a storage area. It had big bright windows, so it wasn't the worst room, but she decorated it like a birthday party in there so that it felt really welcoming and fun. And then she brought in like a PlayStation, an Xbox, different things that have nothing to do with church. Like, just because you're here all day doesn't mean we're going to thump your head with a Bible all day. Like, we can let you off the hook and let you be a child. So a bin of Lego, stuffies, beanbag chairs, cozy spaces, different lighting, like one of those little tents that you can set up with different like soft surfaces. And then putting 2 volunteers in that room that just care for the kids of other volunteers, for other pastors. Our pastors' kids that get stuck at the church for 11 hours on a Sunday. They're just there until Tuesday, it seems. And for them, it feels like forever. And so to set up a room that's like, hey, we know that you like, what do you want to bring from home? We're going to keep it safe in this room. And this is your landing pad. This is for you when your parents are busy, when your parents are serving. We really love that your parents are so generous with their time, but we want to be generous to their kids. So refueling for the parents, yes. Also a soft place to fall for those leaders' families that says, we don't need you to go to Sunday school 4 times today. We don't need you to hear the same story. Because you know what happens to those kids? They're the ones that like, Jesus, Moses, squirrel, like they know all the answers by the 4th service and they don't care. They've lost the point of the story because they've watched the same video 4 times. They've done the same craft 4 times. So what if we gave them a different space? That also shows honor and appreciation to the family commitment to serving. It's like, we're going to create a space for your kids. You choose which service they go to. That's up to you. You check them in and out. And there's like a different room to check those kids into, and they just can go and hang out. And there's snacks in there for them too, because it's a long day. It's a long day when parents are volunteering for big events. So what does it look like to care for them without like the ministry to those kids is letting them be kids in that moment, right? Not every moment has to be a church moment for those kids. Sometimes honoring them looks like just letting them hang out because their parents are extroverts and they're not, and they're stuck at church all day. And so giving them a living room experience instead of a Sunday school room experience is so kind.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And I've never actually heard anybody speak on that. And I've not seen that in my own church or the ones that I've visited either. So that's a really great idea. Thank you for sharing that.
I wonder too, like as we go
Sure.
into a busy season, I think churches can be nervous about putting children in volunteer roles. But we all know that very mature, high capacity kid that probably has some leadership gifting that's already evidencing itself. Where can you partner them with a mentor and have them serve somewhere and say to the parents, you know what? Do you think that Nathan would be happy to do this, this, or this? I don't know. I'll ask them. And then there's like this augmenting of that child's presence at church too. And then they become part of the team and then they get a gift too, right? Like there's this doubling down on, we know you're here and we don't just want to keep you from like getting lost in the building. We actually see evidence of the Holy Spirit in you and would love, like, how would you love to use this gift? I see this gift in you. Where do you think you could use that gift? And it could be hanging out with toddlers, right? Like 10-year-olds are really good with toddlers when they like toddlers. And toddlers love 10-year-olds just because they're tall. Like you're cool. Like they're cool just because they showed up, right? And so there's that opportunity to honor the parents that serve in your ministry too by saying, I see your child growing in the ways that you have shown them to serve. they have a servant's heart too. Where can we put that? How can we shape that servanthood in your kid? And I think words like leadership in churches are usually spared for adulty spaces. And I think we miss out on some exceptional leaders by not introducing those opportunities sooner. The discipleship happens in the life on life. Like, obviously, a 10-year-old isn't going to be left alone in a room with toddlers, but they could probably even lead a lesson if they are that kid, right? And so what does it look like for someone else to mentor that kid, to bring them alongside? So just as I'm thinking about like this safe space for our over-churched kids, some of them, not all of them, but some of them also have something to offer back. And they don't need to be bored. We can grow curious about those kids as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I want to just for a few minutes go back to the idea of when you are going to give volunteers a gift. You had kind of touched on that and said, when I really want to give them something to open, I like it to be personal. It doesn't have to be 80 different things, but I like to at least choose from some things that I think kind of more personally match them. When you do that, do you make that obvious that they're different before they open them, or is it just like all the gift bags are the same, but what's inside of them is different, and it depends on whose name is on it as to what's inside? I mean, there's no preference, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it depends on if you're writing a note to go with it, right? Like, it's really easy to say, I saw this and I thought of you, here's why. Like, if it's an ornament that has the word joy on it, I don't think that applies to all of our volunteers. Some are just like exuberant. They're so happy to see the kids. They bring the warm welcome. They're that safe person for that one kid that never wants to let go of mama's leg. But if, in my context, it was Mr. John. If Mr. John was there were about 4 kids that would stay that wouldn't if he wasn't serving, which actually convicted him to serve every week. He's like, well, these kids need to come to church. So I guess I'm just volunteering every week. Like, it was a no-brainer for him. I'm like, yeah, you are. Like, that's exactly right, Mr. John. You are here every week. And he would attend a different service. So he was kind of there all morning with us. But I would, like, as much as my hand would cramp and as much as I would not look forward to it, the exercise of writing a personalized card to each team member was worth it to me. It would shift my heart, right? Like, rather than everyone take a box of chocolates, like everybody eat whatever, there's a box for everybody. That's different than there's a gift for everybody. Here's the card. Like, so glad about this. Really grateful for your contribution here. When I think about joy in kids ministry, it's that little one letting go of their mom's leg and grabbing onto you, Mr. John. Thank you for bringing the joy every Sunday. And so then you can, they might not know that their gift is different than someone else, but they definitely know that that gift goes with how you feel about them. And so I would say, if it came down to budget, I would be choosing Christmas cards. Like, I would be choosing handwritten cards over an object every time too, just because of the difference it makes for someone to feel seen and known and appreciated specifically. Now, having said that, given that there are so many options, I would just decide like how it is that you want to communicate to this person your appreciation. And so even if all the gifts are the same, the card is what really lets them know that this is from me to you. And no, the people that serve the Tuesday morning Bible study didn't get the same gifts, right? Like that this was, even if it's just the kids ministry, people are getting something similar. We know some of our volunteers are in all the spaces. So what they don't need is 3 ornaments that say joy on them. But imagine if you actually talk to the other ministries and like each different silo of ministry chose a different word for Advent. And lo and behold, this one volunteer at the end of the season goes, I got one of each. like the intentionality behind that, right? It just communicates a thoughtfulness. And I think we can run out of time to be thoughtful because it takes time to be thoughtful, but we always know Christmas is coming. So I think like now is the time to make those decisions and start those cards if you haven't already, just so that you don't feel like you're chasing your hand cramp right till Christmas Eve. And so to answer your question, like whether they all open them at the same time or not, and see that they're the same, or whether or not, you know, you have two people from the same family on your team and they know they got different gifts. What they definitely got was a different sentiment and a personal note to go with it. I don't think they would understand why they got different gifts, even if you didn't write them a note, or you know, if there wasn't a gathering of some sort to say, so for those of you with little ones, I decided to do a family gift. For those of you that this is just how my brain worked, and I hope you love it. Like, I hope you see what I did there, you know, but in the absence of being able to gather for that purpose, a short note, like a 2 or 3 sentence note, goes a long way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think there will always be examples in the moment, but there would undoubtedly have been plenty of them throughout the year. So starting early, especially for those that are more highly committed, should be very possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that idea. Is there anything else that strikes you about volunteers and Christmas that we should talk about today?
Yeah, I would say, so I would say not to feel, I think we can feel badly about like, well, I can't afford this, or I can't, like my budget got cut. Like we all know that Christmas can be tight or Christmas can be tough, and that happens to churches. Like I've seen some church budgets lately that just, these are hard times. The cost of living has gone up. There's the cost of living actually is impacting our families. One of the studies I read calls it a mood meter. And so the mood meter since COVID isn't rebounding for our young families, for our millennials and Gen Zs. And so I would just not worry so much about what it is you give to your volunteers, but that you make the time and energy to appreciate, notice, speak into their lives, encourage. And if you really don't know, like especially if you're new, like some people have started in their roles in the last few months. It's really hard to get to know your team in time for Christmas to be able to be so thoughtful. Like not everybody is serving in a church where they grew up. And so how do I know that? Well, the thoughtfulness and the intentionality is going to go a long way. So even if you meet with members of your team who have been at the church a long time and say, what do you think our team really needs? That is one of my favorite questions as a coach and as a leader, to be able to say, what do you really need? What do you need this Christmas? Is there something that we could really come alongside you with? Is there something we can do for you? How can we serve you best? I think asking that question so that your appreciation doesn't get missed in like, well, we got this gift. It's just a token of my appreciation. Well, it isn't really. It was a lot of effort on your part. Like, don't minimize what you're trying to do, because it takes a lot of effort to choose a gift, to write a note, all of that. So while it might just be a token, the amount of effort you put into creating a moment of appreciation is what goes a really long way, to be able to, even if you are new, to say, I found it so hard to know how to do this year because I'm new to you and you're new to me. But what I really want you to know is how important your leadership has been in my transition, or in this season, or we decided to take on 2 Jesus birthday bashes this year, or we took on a 3rd weekend of the pageant, or whatever it is. And I am so blessed by your increased enthusiasm and your contribution, and I couldn't have done it without you. I think just knowing that doing nothing really isn't an option. That isn't the way of Jesus. But whatever you choose, no matter how small or how large your budget can afford, that isn't what will be remembered. It will be the how, the delivery, the thoughtfulness behind it. I was once, I was at a conference last year where a few speakers were talking about radical hospitality. And when you look at the value of hospitality in Jewish culture, and so you think of Jesus being raised in a culture of exuberant hospitality, actually ancient Judaism would suggest that if hospitality is not felt or experienced in the home, the belief is that God will not hear your prayers. Like your access to God is directly proportionate to your extension of hospitality. So if you think about appreciation and gifts in terms of hospitality and how Jesus welcomed all, and how does my token, however big or small, of appreciation communicate hospitality? I think that's another way to look at it, where while Jesus wasn't wrapping up Christmas gifts to celebrate his own birthday, this is something we've made up to do that. He did highly prize hospitality. And I was reminded recently, I love listening to scripture, like on the Bible app, to just listen through whole chunks. Because I think when we follow with our eye, we can stop at chapter headings or at like subject headings as if those were written in there. And we know that, editors add those chapter headings and even chapter numbers and verses. But when you listen through, like I listened through the whole book of Luke the other day, just because it just sounds like an audiobook if you're just listening to it. And it got to the verse where Jesus says, take these gifts I've given you into all these cities. And he's commissioning the 12 and says, if you are not met with hospitality, turn around, leave that city and dust off your feet. And it was once explained to me that the issue, like the way I read that is, I'm out, like there's that sense of like, I'm out of here. You weren't hospitable. I'm gone. But actually, from a Jewish perspective, the more important point was the reason you have to dust off your feet is because you did not experience hospitality. Your feet are still dirty. Someone should have washed your feet the moment you entered. That's how you know that you haven't had a warm reception, because your feet are dirty. And so this idea that hospitality communicates the presence of the Lord. And so how you give a gift, doesn't matter what it is or how you wrap it, or if you're good at any of like, you don't have to make your own card. You don't have to be good at any of these things. What we do have to be good at as disciples of Jesus, when we walk in his ways, we have to be good at hospitality. And so communicating that warm hospitality, that warm spirit of appreciation, that's how we remind each other that God with us, Emmanuel, is near in this season. And that hospitality that we create makes space for other people to be welcomed warmly. And so it's, in modern terms, that washing of feet, that, hi, I'm so glad you're here. Come on in. Let's be together. Let me speak joy over you. Let me speak peace over you. Let me speak truth over you about how I see you and how grateful I am for you. That will do more to galvanize the culture of your ministry than the gift itself. It won't be the size or value of the gift, but how you give it and that spirit of hospitality in which it's given, because people are immediately reminded of the presence of the Holy Spirit when hospitality is shown and extended and shared.
Wow. Kind of a mini sermon. Thank you.
Sorry.
No,
pastor,
no,
always a pastor.
In the best possible way. Just short and sweet, and just that beautiful reminder of the ways of Jesus, and that, not to get so caught up in our realities that we forget that one key piece of that he left behind us, for us, that all are welcome.
All are welcome. Yeah. And even like to the subject we're speaking of, what I would say is, even if a volunteer has only been serving a week, they too get included. Like we love all of our volunteers. And so even if they are just seasonal, to love them really well, and rather than like, you sure you don't want to keep going in January? Like, we don't need to do that in these moments of hospitality and appreciation. To just be like, I am so glad you joined us for Christmas. I am so grateful that you got to catch a glimpse of the kingdom among the children. Like, I'm so excited for what you learned from the kids and from what they learned from you in this season, to just let it be what it is and let the Holy Spirit do his part in, this is what they had to give. And it was more than enough. They had these 3 weeks or these 3 months to serve in this way, and to be just so exuberantly grateful for what it is and how they serve.
Yeah, absolutely. No accidents, right?
No.
Decide
And
to serve.
I should say that the reason why my team went from 120 to 80 wasn't just because I was looking for more commitment. It was the type of commitment that the Lord asked me to commission into them. I learned that there was this nuance happening among the grown-ups, that you have to miss church to serve in kids ministry, that you somehow have given up going to church to serve in kids ministry. And so as I started picking up on this rhetoric that certainly wasn't coming from me and certainly wasn't permissioned by me, I took the next opportunity where we had sort of an all-team gathering where you have to do your plan to protect, your safety procedures, that once a year where everybody needs to tick the boxes. And I said, did you know that you haven't missed a thing by coming to church in a different room? Did you know that you have been to church on Sunday? You are serving in church, just like the worship team serves in church, or the ushers serve in church, or the preacher serves in church, or the tech team serves in church. They haven't missed church either. And you haven't missed church by serving in our church. And I began to talk about kids ministry as church, because I realized that there was this nuance that you needed to find a way to make up for what you missed out, like FOMO, but not because they necessarily wanted to be there, but because there was guilt, this culture of guilt around missing church. And I had a few volunteers come up to me and say, I get more, and this is not a comment on the preaching, teaching, or anything. They said, I feel more fed and more vital in this church. So what you're telling me is I can come to church in the basement every Sunday, and that's okay. I'm like, that's more than okay. I come to church in the basement every Sunday. That's where the kids go to church. What are we saying to the kids about church? And so the team actually, I sent them away on a discernment process of, where do you want to go to church on Sunday? And you can go to church lots of places. There's junior high, there's, the main auditorium, there's kids church, there's the worship team, there's all kinds of spaces where you can go to church, but not one of them holds more value in the kingdom. Like, you haven't missed church if you are serving the body of Christ on a Sunday. And some of them just doubled down on kids ministry and said, this is where I feel most comfortable worshiping. This is where I want to worship on Sunday. This is where I want to learn. I want to learn from the kids. I want to learn. And that one woman was a new Christian, and she said she was learning more by having to figure out how to teach stories she had never heard as a child. And so she became one of our every week kindergarten teachers, because she's like, I don't know these stories. I want to learn these stories, and I don't think I'm going to learn them any other way. And so I think, in fairness to saying my team shrunk, and it wasn't me saying, I need more from you. It was, did you know that you have been to church on Sunday, and you get to choose where you go to church on Sunday? And it just kind of reshaped and reimagined what we believed we were doing together on Sundays. And it was It was my favorite season because of how we began to reimagine each other's contribution, and how we talked about what we did, that it wasn't a kids program. It wasn't Sunday school. It was church. This is the body, and we are worshiping as one body. So I just wanted to circle back on that and say it wasn't because if you can't give me 2 Sundays a week, you can't serve. Like, it wasn't a mandate. It was a, I wonder how we got here moment. And is this the cultural nuance that we want to move towards? Because you get to choose. You get to choose the culture of hospitality, the culture of appreciation, the culture of commitment and worship and service as one body. You decide, you set the tone. People are looking to you to set the tone to do that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to pause here. I don't believe we've had any questions come through the chat yet, but if there's something that's on your mind that you want to ask, Christie, now is your opportunity to do that. We've got 5 minutes left before we get to the top of the hour, and plenty of time to ask a question if we want to. So I just wanted to make that offer one last time. And while you're thinking about that, I just really want to say thank you to Christie. Sometimes the topics that we cover, they feel rather straightforward and simple, but every conversation with you, when we start unpacking them, it has so many nuances to it. And there's always just this beautiful glimpse of heaven in every conversation with you. And I just really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like we have not had. Oh, okay. We just got our first question. Christie, thank you. I'm new to children's ministry. Do you do any mentoring?
I do. I mean, that's part of what I do. And that's outside of the work of Raise Up Faith. But also, I would strongly suggest getting connected to a couple of networks or communities. The Kids Matter community is excellent. They have a vibrant Facebook group called I Love Kidmin Kids Matter, where there's lots of idea sharing. It's almost like you sort of have to strap yourself in if you're going to dive into any one of the posts, because there are so many people in it. But lots of people are asking the same questions as you when you're new. And so it's like, what curriculum do you use? Why? What are you doing about Thanksgiving? What about Halloween? And then, Facebook explodes and you have all these nuanced answers depending, and you can, they're ecumenical groups. So you get different flavors based on, denominational theology. But I think that always makes the conversation richer when we understand different perspectives. The other network that I would suggest looking into, if you haven't, is INCM. It stands for International Network of Children's Ministry. They have a more formal coaching program I was certified through that network to do children's ministry coaching. And they also do some training. They partner with Bethel Seminary. So if you're looking for more formal training as well, they do some certifications. So from a more formal standpoint, those are some options. Kids Matter also has Kidmin Academy, where you sort of bite off these different topics one at a time. And those are great for starting out. I found I had about a year of capacity in me. When I look back, I had about a year of learning, being new to ministry, before I hit a wall of, I don't know what I don't know. And I need to hear from and learn alongside other people doing kids ministry, because, getting the rhythm of doing curriculum week in and week out and all that. Okay. Once you've got that, there's still this whole other side to the job, which is relational and administrative. Like, there's lots of tasks and events and stuff. And so having a community to walk with became really important to me in that season. And actually, children's ministry leaders, especially new ones, often feel quite under-equipped theologically. And so finding other people who are on a learning curve to learn alongside can be really helpful. as well. But I would plug into a few networks, but I'll just put my website address in here. It's just my name, but my name is long and not straightforward. So I'll put it in the chat. And then if you want to reach out and chat, you're more than welcome to. I came into ministry out of the marketplace. I was in the corporate world, but that was after 10 years of the Lord asking me to be at home with my children, which was not the dream as far as I was concerned. I wasn't one of those women that dreamed of being at home with my kids, but it became the more than I could ask or imagine dream. He made me who I was meant to be by making me a mother first. And so my ministry heart is pretty much the same as my mama heart. One birthed the other. And so that's sort of the approach that I get to take. And I was almost 40 by the time I came into ministry. So it's not like I've done this for decades and I've tried everything. I didn't. I just ran fast and hard and then realized it was really lonely without a tribe. So I'm certainly happy to help you make some introductions for you as well, Pam, so that you get plugged into some community spaces.
Thank you. Thank you. And Cindy, I know you said you didn't have a question, but you've taken away several key learnings from today, and we certainly are happy for that. That's the whole purpose of meeting up together and talking about topics that are important to all of us. So we just share new ideas and hopefully learn from each other during these meetups as well. Also, I know Christie said that, and we are certainly aware that things cost more these days, and those church budgets are not necessarily ballooning up to match any levels of inflation. So for those of you who were on the call today, if you'll drop something into the Hive, just drop a comment about today's conversation into the Hive, we will get you a 20% off a code so that you can use that towards getting those volunteer gifts if gifts are what you want to provide to some of your key volunteers. So we thank you so much for being with us today. I think today's conversation, like all the ones before, have just been really rich, and I just know that they're going to be a blessing not only to the people that are writing down ideas today, but to those that will see this when it gets replayed. So thank you again, Christie, for all your wisdom and your insights and your generosity to share that with us.
Thank you so much for having me again.